On the night of January 20th, 2026, the most secure aircraft in the world turned around mid-flight over the Atlantic Ocean. The President of the United States was aboard. The official explanation was simple: a minor electrical issue. Out of an abundance of caution, they said. But here's what they didn't tell you in that press briefing. That aircraft, one of two modified Boeing 747s serving as Air Force One, has been in service for more than 35 years. Its replacement was supposed to arrive in 2022. It's now delayed until 2028, and Boeing has already lost $2.4 billion trying to build it. This isn't just a story about one plane having a bad night. This is about what happens when critical infrastructure, the kind that carries the commander-in-chief across hostile airspace, starts to fail. And about a president who accepted a $400 million luxury jet from a foreign government while his own Air Force can't deliver. Here are the facts. According to White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, Air Force One departed Joint Base Andrews in Maryland at approximately 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, January 20th, 2026. President Trump was en route to Davos, Switzerland, to address the World Economic Forum. Less than an hour into the flight, the crew identified what they described as a minor electrical issue. Pool reporters traveling with the president said the lights in the press cabin briefly went out after takeoff. No further explanation was provided at that moment. Flight tracking data from ADS-B Exchange shows the Boeing 747 making a sharp turn over the Atlantic Ocean, just off the easternmost tip of Long Island, New York. Air Force One landed back at Joint Base Andrews at 11:07 p.m. Staffers scrambled to transfer luggage between aircraft. Crew members moved boxes of fruit, wrapped sandwiches, beverages, quickly, methodically. Just after midnight, the president boarded a second aircraft, a C-32, a modified Boeing 757 normally used for domestic trips to smaller airports. It took off for Davos. Trump arrived in Switzerland approximately 3 hours late. 2-second pause. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, already in Davos, confirmed the delay to reporters. The president delivered his speech as scheduled, addressing European leaders amid escalating tensions over Greenland and new tariffs he had announced just days earlier. To understand what happened that night, you need to understand Air Force One itself. Pause. The term Air Force One isn't the name of a specific plane. It's the radio call sign used by any Air Force aircraft carrying the President of the United States. But for the past 35 years, that call sign has referred almost exclusively to one of two heavily modified Boeing 747-200B jets. These aircraft entered service in 1990. Short pause. They were cutting edge then, custom-built to function as a flying command center capable of operating during nuclear war. Secure communication systems, missile defense capabilities, electromagnetic pulse protection, radiation shielding. Pause. Classified systems we still don't fully know about. But 35 years is a long time for any aircraft, especially one that operates under the scrutiny and security demands of presidential airlift. Maintenance costs for aging systems on 30-year-old airframes and less efficient engines have skyrocketed. According to the U.S. Air Force, those costs began surpassing the price of acquiring new aircraft years ago. That's why, in January 2015, the Air Force announced it would replace the aging VC-25As, the military designation for the presidential 747s, with new Boeing 747-8 aircraft. The contract was awarded in 2018. Original delivery date, 2024. But Boeing has faced what industry experts describe as mounting delays and poor corporate management. The program has been plagued by labor shortages, design complications, and technical challenges. According to CNN, the replacement planes, initially supposed to be delivered in 2022, are now set to arrive in mid-2028. 6 years late. And Boeing has already lost $2.4 billion on the project by the third quarter of 2023, according to A Invest. By 2023, the company reported losing more than $1 billion on each of the two jets individually. So the planes currently carrying the president are aging, expensive to maintain, and their replacements are nowhere in sight. Now let's walk through what actually happened on January 20th and what it reveals. First, the electrical issue itself. White House officials described it as minor. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the decision to turn around was made out of an abundance of caution. Beat. That phrase, abundance of caution, is critical. It's standard protocol in presidential air operations to prioritize safety even for non-critical malfunctions. Short pause. According to Aviation Source News, this is a routine decision-making framework designed to eliminate risk, not respond to imminent danger. But here's the thing. Pause. Technical issues like this are exceedingly rare on Air Force One. CNN reported that despite the age of these jets, such malfunctions are unusual. The most recent comparable incident occurred in 2006. Then President George W. Bush was in Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. A mechanical issue grounded Air Force One before Bush even boarded the aircraft. The problem was discovered while the plane was still on the ground. Bush flew to his next destination on a backup plane. So yes, this kind of thing has happened before, but not often. Now, about that backup plane. The C-32 that Trump eventually flew on is a modified Boeing 757. According to the U.S. Air Force, the C-32 provides safe, comfortable, and reliable transportation for U.S. leaders to locations around the world. Beat. It's normally used by the Vice President, call sign Air Force Two, as well as the First Lady, cabinet members, and members of Congress. The C-32 is a medium-range aircraft, not as heavily modified as the 747, fewer communication systems, less survivability capability. Pause. But it was enough to get the president to Davos safely. Here's where the story gets more complicated. In May 2025, President Trump confirmed that the royal family of Qatar had gifted the United States a Boeing 747-8 jumbo jet valued at $400 million. According to CBS News, Trump has said this jet could eventually be used as Air Force One, a foreign government, giving the president a plane. PBS NewsHour reported that the gift raised ethical and legal concerns. Democratic lawmakers introduced a resolution condemning the gift. Representative Joe Courtney, ranking member of a key defense subcommittee, said the idea of the president accepting and using a $400 million plane gifted by Qatar raises serious ethical questions. NPR reported that the Trump administration first approached Qatar to inquire about acquiring the jet, contradicting the narrative that it was an unsolicited gift. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW, called for congressional hearings on the matter. They argued the jet would be used first as Air Force One, then transferred to Trump's personal presidential library after his term. 2-second pause. According to Air Force Secretary Troy Mike, renovating the Qatari jet to meet security and mission requirements could cost several $100 million before it's ready for use. Trump said the jet could be ready as early as February 2026. Aviation experts and foreign officials expressed deep skepticism. Beat. Now, back on Air Force One that night, after the electrical issue forced the turnaround, Press Secretary Leavitt joked with reporters. She said the Qatari jet was sounding much better now. Let that sink in. It was a joke, but it exposed the real tension. Pause. The planes we have are aging and unreliable. The planes we ordered are delayed and over budget. And the president has a foreign-gifted jet sitting in a hangar in Louisiana, undergoing modifications no one will fully explain. So what does all of this actually mean? Let's start with Boeing. The company was awarded a $3.9 billion contract, later increased to over $4.3 billion to build two new Air Force One jets. Beat. According to Reuters, Boeing's defense unit has struggled with another year of losses across multiple programs. In the third quarter of 2023 alone, the company reported $933 million in charges. $482 million of that was from the Air Force One program. Slow. Boeing has now lost more than $1 billion on each of the two jets, according to CNN. By Q3 2023, cumulative losses on the VC-25B program reached $2.4 billion. That's not a rounding error. That's a corporate catastrophe. 2-second pause. Why? According to Popular Science, aviation experts blame poor corporate management at Boeing and potentially insufficient oversight. The program has faced labor shortages, design complications, a limitation of mechanics available to work on the highly specialized 747-8 airframe, according to Simple Flying. Beat. And Boeing is also dealing with broader financial and reputational crises. The 737 MAX disasters, production delays, quality control failures. The Air Force One program is just one more failure in a growing list. But here's what makes this particularly concerning. Slow. Presidential airlift isn't just transportation. It's a critical component of national security infrastructure. Pause. According to defense analysts, Air Force One is designed to function as a mobile command center in the event of nuclear war, terrorist attack, or catastrophic national emergency. The plane's secure communications allow the president to maintain contact with military commanders and government officials anywhere on Earth. If that system is aging, if it's unreliable, if it's prone to electrical failures mid-flight, even minor ones, not just for convenience, for continuity of government. 2-second pause. Now, let's talk about the Qatari jet. Qatar is a small but strategically significant Gulf state. It hosts Al Udeid Air Base, the largest U.S. military installation in the Middle East. According to NPR, Qatar has long sought to deepen its relationship with the United States through defense partnerships and economic ties. Beat. Gifting a $400 million aircraft to the president is not a neutral act. It's a geopolitical investment. Short pause. The Constitution's Emoluments Clause prohibits federal officials from accepting gifts from foreign governments without congressional approval. The legal question here is whether accepting the jet, then using it for official presidential duties, violates that principle. Pause. The Trump administration has argued the jet is a gift to the United States, not to Trump personally. But, as Crew pointed out, the president has said the plane will eventually be transferred to his presidential library. That blurs the line. And even if it's technically legal, it creates the appearance of impropriety. Foreign governments with strategic interests shouldn't be buying the president's transportation. Now, consider the timing. Trump was flying to Davos to address the World Economic Forum. Just days earlier, on January 17th, he had announced 10% tariffs on imports from 8 European countries, including Denmark, Norway, Sweden, France, Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, and the United Kingdom. The reason? Their opposition to U.S. control of Greenland. According to the New York Times, Trump said the tariffs would begin February 1st. Denmark, which governs Greenland as an autonomous territory, was the primary target. Trump has repeatedly expressed interest in acquiring Greenland, calling it a strategic necessity. Danish officials have called the idea absurd. Pause. European leaders responded with outrage. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said Europe was prepared to act in response to the tariffs. CNN reported that Europe has a trade bazooka, retaliatory tariffs, and economic leverage that could escalate the situation quickly. Beat. Trump was walking into a hostile diplomatic environment, and his plane turned back over the Atlantic. 2-second pause. I'm not suggesting sabotage. There's no evidence of that. But the optics are terrible. The most powerful man in the world flying to confront America's closest allies in an aging aircraft that can't make it across the ocean. Let that sink in. So, why does this matter? Because infrastructure isn't glamorous until it fails. And when it fails at 35,000 feet with the president aboard, it becomes a national security issue. The planes that carry our presidents are not luxuries. They're command centers, mobile bastions of continuity of government. If they're unreliable, that creates vulnerability, not just physical, strategic. Adversaries notice when critical systems falter. They notice when replacements are delayed. They notice when a president accepts a plane from a foreign government because his own military can't deliver. This sends a signal. Not a strong one. 2-second pause. And then there's Boeing. The company has lost billions on this contract. But more importantly, it has failed to deliver a critical national security asset on time. Is Boeing can't build 2 planes for the president in a decade? What does that say about America's industrial capacity, about our ability to maintain strategic infrastructure? The Air Force announced in December 2025 that it would purchase 2 additional Boeing jets from Lufthansa to support the presidential airlift program. Delivery dates 2026. We're buying used jets from a German airline to keep the president flying. Let that sink in. And finally, there's the political dimension. Trump has made America first the cornerstone of his foreign policy. But he's accepting a $400 million jet from Qatar while imposing tariffs on Europe. He's threatening to acquire Greenland by force. He's alienating allies while cozying up to Gulf monarchies. The contradictions are glaring, and they're playing out in real time, literally mid-flight. So what happens next? According to the Air Force, the new Boeing 747-8 jets are now expected in mid-2028. That's 2.5 years away. In the meantime, the 2 35-year-old VC-25As will continue flying. They'll continue aging. Maintenance costs will continue rising. And the risk, however small, of another electrical issue, another mechanical failure, another mid-flight turnaround remains. As for the Qatari jet, Trump has said it could be operational as early as February 2026, this month. But Air Force Secretary Mike's estimate, several $100 million and extensive modifications, suggests that's unrealistic. If the jet does become operational, it will likely face intense scrutiny, congressional oversight, media attention, public skepticism. Every time the president flies on it, the ethical questions will resurface. On the geopolitical front, the tariffs Trump announced on January 17th are set to take effect February 1st. Europe has signaled it will retaliate. According to CNN, the EU has prepared what analysts call a trade bazooka, a suite of retaliatory tariffs targeting American goods. If both sides escalate, this could spiral into a full-blown trade war between the United States and its closest allies. That would have real economic consequences. Higher prices for consumers, supply chain disruptions, damaged diplomatic relationships. And all of this, tariffs, Greenland, the Qatari jet, the aging Air Force One, will be front and center in the 2026 midterm elections. Voters will ask whether this administration can manage critical infrastructure, whether it can maintain alliances, whether it can project competence on the world stage. The answer to those questions remains uncertain. On the night of January 20th, 2026, Air Force One turned back over the Atlantic Ocean. The official explanation was a minor electrical issue, and maybe that's all it was. But the incident exposed something deeper. It exposed an aging fleet of presidential aircraft that should have been replaced years ago. It exposed a defense contractor, Boeing, that has failed to deliver, hemorrhaging billions in the process. It exposed a president who accepted a $400 million jet from a foreign government while America's own military infrastructure crumbles. And it exposed the gap between rhetoric and reality. between America first and the compromises required to keep the president in the air. 2-second pause. This isn't just about one plane. It's about the systems we rely on, the infrastructure we take for granted, the industrial capacity we've let decay. Pause. And it's about what happens when those systems fail. Not catastrophically, just incrementally. A light goes out in the press cabin. A decision is made. The plane turns around. And 3 hours later, the president delivers his speech as planned. Everything continues. Let that sink in. But the questions remain. How long can we keep flying on 35-year-old jets? How much longer will Boeing keep missing deadlines? How much money will we lose before accountability kicks in? Beat. And what message does it send to the world when the most powerful nation on Earth can't replace its president's airplane on time? 2-second pause. These are not rhetorical questions. They have real answers. We just don't know them yet. Final pause. If you want to stay ahead of stories like this, stories the headlines don't fully explain, hit subscribe. We're tracking infrastructure failures, geopolitical shifts, and the economic consequences that follow. Because the next time Air Force One turns around mid-flight, you'll want to know why.